Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Roots of Islam channel. Across the sunlit coastlines and vast interior landscapes of Australia, a quiet religious transformation is unfolding. Known internationally for its secular ethos, multicultural migration history, and relaxed civic culture, Australia is not commonly associated with religious revival. Yet, beneath the surface of university campuses, suburban neighborhoods, and professional workplaces, an observable trend has emerged. A noticeable number of young Australians are embracing Islam. This development presents a compelling contradiction within one of the world's most secular Western societies. Why are young Australians, raised in a culture often described as post-religious, increasingly turning toward one of the world's fastest-growing faiths? And what does this shift reveal about identity, belonging, and the evolving spiritual landscape of modern Australia? Today, we examine the data, the stories, and the deeper trajectory behind this phenomenon. Before analyzing contemporary youth conversions, it is necessary to understand Islam's historical presence in Australia. Contrary to popular perception, Islam did not arrive recently. The earliest documented Muslim presence dates back to the 1860s, when Afghan cameleers were brought to assist with inland exploration and railway construction. Historians estimate that between 1860 and 1910, roughly 3,000 Muslim cameleers operated across the Australian interior. Although many later returned home, they established some of the continent's first prayer spaces and small mosque structures in towns such as Broken Hill and Adelaide. However, Islam remained demographically marginal throughout the early 20th century. According to historical census records, fewer than 1,000 Muslims were officially recorded nationwide before World War II. The modern trajectory began after the dismantling of the White Australia policy in the early 1970s. Immigration reforms opened pathways for migrants from Turkey, Lebanon, Bosnia, and later from South Asia and Africa. The Lebanese Civil War during the 1970s and 1980s triggered one of the most significant early migration waves. Turkish migration agreements signed in the late 1960s also contributed to long-term community formation. By 1981, census figures showed approximately 76,000 Muslims residing in Australia. By 2001, that number had increased to roughly 281,000. The growth was driven primarily by migration and natural increase rather than conversion. At the same time, small but consistent conversion activity began appearing in university settings. Campus Islamic societies expanded during the 1990s and early 2000s, particularly in major metropolitan institutions. While conversion numbers were modest, anecdotal evidence from Islamic councils suggests that the majority of converts during this period were under the age of 35. Thus, the 0 point for youth conversion was not sudden but gradual, emerging within a broader demographic expansion that laid the institutional foundation for future growth. The most reliable contemporary data comes from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. According to the 2021 census, 813,392 people identified as Muslim, representing 3.2% of Australia's total population. This marks an increase from 604,200 in 2016, when Muslims comprised 2.6% of the population. The numerical rise of over 209,000 individuals within 5 years reflects both immigration and natural demographic expansion. Geographically, the Muslim population is concentrated in major urban centers. In Sydney, particularly in the southwestern suburb of Lakemba, Muslims constitute more than 20% of the local population. Melbourne accounts for approximately 37% of the national Muslim population, while Brisbane hosts a smaller but steadily growing community. Ethnically, Australian Muslims are diverse. Census breakdowns indicate significant representation from Lebanese, Turkish, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Afghan, Indonesian, Somali, and Bosnian backgrounds. Notably, around 38% of Muslims in Australia were born domestically, reflecting the maturation of second-generation communities. Institutional infrastructure has expanded correspondingly. The Auburn Gallipoli Mosque in Sydney, operated by the Turkish community, accommodates approximately 1,500 worshippers and serves as a central religious and cultural hub. In Melbourne, the Preston Mosque provides prayer services, educational programs, and youth outreach initiatives, supporting a congregation of several thousand during major events. Nationwide, there are estimated to be over 300 mosque facilities and Islamic prayer centers. Islamic schools have also grown in number. Government education statistics indicate more than 40 Islamic primary and secondary schools currently operate across Australia, serving tens of thousands of students. Halal certification bodies, Islamic financial advisory services, and youth organizations such as university Islamic societies form part of a broader institutional ecosystem. Meanwhile, second- and third-generation Muslims increasingly occupy professional roles in law, medicine, academia, and public administration. Within this expanding infrastructure, youth conversion has become more visible. While exact annual conversion figures are not centrally recorded, Islamic councils estimate several hundred formal Shahada declarations occur annually nationwide. Importantly, most converts are under 30, reflecting a generational dimension to this religious shift. Daily Muslim life in Australia operates within a highly secular environment, requiring adaptation and negotiation. 5 daily prayers are often performed at workplaces or universities, where multi-faith rooms have become increasingly common. Research from university equity offices indicates that most major campuses now provide designated prayer facilities. Ramadan observance illustrates both challenge and cohesion. During the month of fasting, Lakemba's main commercial strip transforms into a vibrant night market, attracting thousands of visitors nightly. Local council estimates suggest that over 75,000 people visit the area during peak Ramadan evenings. Eid prayers are typically held in large venues or public parks, where attendance can exceed 10,000 in major cities. These gatherings reflect not only religious devotion but also demographic visibility. Halal food access has expanded significantly. Supermarket chains increasingly stock halal-certified meat products, while halal restaurants are common in metropolitan districts. Market research suggests the halal food sector in Australia is valued at several $billion annually, reflecting both domestic consumption and export markets. Muslim children attend a mix of public, private, and Islamic schools. Integration studies indicate that educational attainment levels among Australian Muslims are comparable to national averages, particularly among second-generation youth. Interfaith initiatives also form part of daily life. Mosque open days, church-mosque dialogues, and academic seminars contribute to social cohesion. Surveys conducted by social research institutes show that interfaith participation among young Muslims has increased steadily over the past decade. Within this framework, young converts often find structured support networks, mentorship programs, and online study circles that facilitate their religious transition. Behind demographic statistics lie individual narratives of spiritual exploration. One example frequently cited in community discussions is that of Daniel, a Melbourne-born university student who converted at age 22 after studying Islamic philosophy and comparative religion courses. Raised in a nominally Christian household, he described experiencing intellectual resonance with Islamic monotheism. His Shahada ceremony at Preston Mosque was attended by approximately 200 congregants, reflecting strong communal support. Another case is Aisha, formerly known as Emily, from Sydney's northern suburbs. After engaging with Muslim peers during medical school, she began attending campus lectures on Islamic ethics. She formally embraced Islam at age 24. She later described the transformation as structured rather than emotional, emphasizing discipline, daily prayer, and community cohesion. While exact numbers remain estimated, Islamic outreach organizations suggest that several hundred Australians convert annually, with the majority under 30 years old. Studies in religious sociology indicate that converts are often motivated by intellectual inquiry, marriage relationships, or ethical alignment rather than social pressure. Support structures have developed accordingly. Convert care programs offer foundational classes, mentorship pairing, and counseling services. Online platforms provide educational materials tailored to Australian cultural contexts. For many young converts, the transition involves navigating family reactions. However, surveys indicate that overt familial rejection remains relatively uncommon, with most families eventually adopting a pragmatic acceptance stance. These stories collectively demonstrate that youth conversion is neither impulsive nor isolated but embedded within broader institutional frameworks. Despite institutional consolidation, challenges persist. Islamophobia incidents have been documented periodically, particularly during international geopolitical crises. Community advocacy groups report fluctuations in harassment complaints following major global events. Political discourse has occasionally intensified these tensions. Senator Pauline Hanson of the One Nation Party has publicly criticized aspects of Islamic practice, including debates over halal certification and mosque construction. In 2016, she controversially wore a burqa in Parliament to argue for its prohibition, sparking national debate. Nevertheless, legislative bans on Islamic practice have not materialized at the federal level. Religious freedom protections remain enshrined within Australian constitutional and legal frameworks. Community resilience has manifested through proactive engagement. Mosque open days, youth leadership seminars, and media outreach initiatives aim to counter misconceptions. Surveys conducted by national research institutes indicate that overall attitudes toward Muslims, while occasionally polarized, have gradually stabilized over the past decade. Thus, while political rhetoric occasionally heightens tensions, institutional permanence continues to strengthen. Looking ahead, demographic projections suggest continued growth. Population studies estimate that, if current trends persist, Muslims could comprise between 4% and 5% of Australia's population within the next 15 to 20 years. Natural increase and sustained migration will remain primary drivers, but youth conversions are expected to continue contributing incrementally. Young Muslims are increasingly entering leadership roles in law, academia, journalism, and politics. Civic participation among second-generation Muslims has risen steadily, reflecting integration rather than isolation. Culturally, Islam in Australia is evolving into a distinctly Australian expression, shaped by local norms while retaining theological foundations. English language khutbahs are common. Interfaith collaboration is institutionalized. Muslim professionals participate actively in public debate. Importantly, the presence of Islam in Australia is no longer peripheral. It is structurally embedded within educational, economic, and civic systems. Conversion among young Australians reflects not a rupture, but a reconfiguration of religious identity within a secular democracy. While public narratives may oscillate between concern and curiosity, the empirical trajectory suggests permanence rather than transience. Islam has transitioned from a migrant minority faith to a permanent part of Australia's demographic and cultural landscape. The story of young Australians turning to Islam is therefore not solely about numbers. It is about institutional maturation, intellectual engagement, and generational continuity. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope it was useful.